Hello everyone, Jay Warden here and welcome to my recap and review of the episode The Arsenal of Freedom, an entertaining, action-packed episode that shows off Geordi LaForge's command chops and gives everyone something to do. Don't forget those spoilers, otherwise enjoy. The Enterprise is investigating the disappearance of the USS Drake, which was itself investigating the disappearance of all life on the planet Minos, which was well known for its sales of advanced weapon systems to any side that could afford it. Once in orbit, data confirms there are indeed no lifeforms on the surface and there's no sign of the Drake either when suddenly they receive a phone call from this supposedly dead world. Picard accepts the call and we're immediately treated to a sales pitch from that guy who wanted you to get the hell off his train in the film Ghost. Picard tries to interrupt, but it seems that this is an automated sales message and nobody likes a cold caller, so he cuts off the call and sends Riker with an away team down to the surface to do some investigating. As we beam down, we see we're once again in that same studio set, though this time someone decided to add some greenery and a smoke machine. Keeping an open convict with the ship to keep Picard informed, they start looking about, though Data warns that their communications seem to be being monitored by something, so Picard says they'll see if they can find out what might be doing that from orbit. As the search continues, they stumble across a big-looking space laser, and then split up to widen the search before a figure pops out of the underbrush and says hi to Riker. It's Captain Paul Rice, the commander of the Drake, and a chap who went to the academy with Riker, so this should be a happy little reunion. Something seems a bit off about him though, and he seems only interested in asking questions about the Enterprise. Data and Yar then catch up and a scan confirms there are still no life signs present, so Riker starts feeding Rice bullshit information, and once the game is clearly up, Rice suddenly transforms into a flying sex toy, which traps Riker in some sort of stasis field. Yar makes quick work of the sex toy and they try to beam back up, but the transporter can't lock onto Riker due to the stasis field. Data theorizes that the field is meant to preserve Riker so he can be interrogated for more information later. So Picard decides he needs to come and take a look for himself, tells LaForge to take command of the ship, and then beams down to the planet with Dr. Beverly whilst Data starts trying to find a way to disable the stasis field, once again leaving most of the senior staff without backup on a dangerous planet. It doesn't take long though for another flying sex toy to start attacking them, and as a firefight ensues, Picard and Dr. Beverly end up falling through a hole in some sort of underground cavern, severely injuring Dr. Beverly in the process. Meanwhile, Yar is trying to shoot at the sex toy again, but it seems to have learnt the art of dodging, and so with Data's help they manage to outsmart and destroy it. They quickly realise though that not only is Picard and Dr. Beverly now missing, but their communicators have also been disabled, so Data gets back to trying to free Riker. As Picard tries his best to help Dr. Beverly, Data manages to eventually free Riker from the stasis field, and on the ship they can now pick up all signs of the away team. But just before they try to beam them back up, the shields come on and the ship is promptly attacked by an invisible object, preventing them both from firing back and beaming the away team back to safety. To make matters worse, LaForge has to deal with yet another new chief engineer called Logan, also known as Twat of the episode. Logan keeps trying to push LaForge around, demanding he cede command over to him given his superior rank and experience, but LaForge stands his ground, refuses, and tells him to fuck off back to engineering to do his job, and then tells Worf to see if he can anticipate the firing pattern of the attacker so the ship has a chance to disable or destroy it. On the surface, the away team come under attack yet again, and as Data hilariously throws Yar into cover, they attempt to once again destroy it as they did last time. But again the sex toy has upgraded itself, this time with a shield, and it seems to be getting harder and harder to defeat these things, so this time it takes all three of them firing constantly to overwhelm the shield and destroy it. As well as continuing to improve itself, Data calculates that there is a pattern and they keep showing up every 12 minutes, and they fear the next attack will be the last one as they won't be able to get past its defences, and if things weren't bad enough, Dr. Beverly is losing a lot of blood and going into shock despite Picard's best efforts at some natural medicinal healing. Back on the ship, LaForge is ready to try his shot in the dark strategy, and as the attacker fires again, he tells Worf to return fire, and the Enterprise lets loose. Sadly, it's a swing and a miss, and the attacker continues to engage, draining the shields to a critical point. LaForge looks like he might be starting to panic a little, so gets Chief Engineer Twatface to report back to the bridge. Once he arrives, he orders the ship to leave orbit to get it out to safety whilst Twatface continues his twattery. LaForge though says he's going to give him what he wants and says he'll take command of the saucer section. It seems LaForge has had time to collect himself and has come up with a new strategy, so he intends to separate the ship, keeping most of the crew safe on the saucer, and use the star drive section to return to the planet, re-engage the attacker, and hopefully beam the away team back to safety. After taking a moment to collect himself in the ready room, as well as an annoying and unnecessary psychological pep talk from Troy, we get some reused footage of the ship separating and the star drive section heads back to the planet. Picard meanwhile is trying to keep Dr. Beverly awake whilst he looks around for possible ways out when he stumbles across a blinking light which when pressed turns on a giant looking computer. It shows him a display which seems to be of the other members of the away team being tracked when a holographic projection of the NPC salesman from earlier appears, except this time he's interactable. The salesman continues to do its best sales pitch to Picard and explains this device is a sophisticated weapon system and that what's happening right now is part of the demonstration of its capabilities. He He further explains that the system is highly adaptable and will continue to learn and upgrade from its experiences until it unleashes an indestructible and deadly killing system. Picard realises that this is probably why the planet's population was wiped out. They had designed a weapon system so perfect that they couldn't stop it from killing themselves. As another device is launched to attack the away team, Picard demands the demonstration be aborted, but the salesman doesn't seem to understand why he'd want to do that. Luckily, they're found by the others on the surface, and after a quick update from Picard, Data shows off his android skills by jumping into the chamber with ease, while Riker and Yar try to run away from the now completely deadly and unkillable sex toy. With time running out and no way to seemingly destroy the system without killing everyone, Picard eventually manages to trick the holo salesman into thinking he's going to buy the system from him, and is thus able to end the demonstration, saving Yar and Riker. Back in space, the Star Drive section has arrived back and begins its approach to the planet. LaForge has a cunning plan, and after giving his officers a reassuring pep talk, starts bringing the ship close to the atmosphere, causing things to get a little heated. Eventually though, whatever is tracking them becomes visible from the atmospheric friction, allowing Worf to finally lock phasers, blowing it to pieces. And yet I can't help but wonder why this device was still active even after Picard shut the system off. With all the deadly sex toys now no longer a threat, the ship beams everyone back on board, and Picard teases LaForge about having his ship back in one piece, allowing him to stay command for a little longer. So another quite entertaining, if occasionally mixed bag of an episode. Probably the most action-packed to date in Season 1, with both ground and space firefights going on. At its peak we have 3 plot threads going on here. We've got Riker's team on the surface, Picard and Crusher in the cavern, and Geordi commanding the ship. So it's quite an ensemble effort with everyone getting something to do. Even Yar. Okay, all Yar really does is try to give some tactical advice and shoot things a few times, but it's still nice to see her being used instead of just pressing a few buttons. So it starts off quite well, with an intriguing mystery about the fate of this planet, as well as the missing starship Drake that had initially been sent to investigate said mystery. Once the crew get on the surface, there's this hilarious little sequence as Riker talks to the fake image of Captain Paul Rice, calling his ship the Lollipop and feeding it other false information, causing some obvious confusion to the holo image. The image itself is well played by Marco Rodriguez, who comes off a little creepy here, and you can tell that something is just not quite human about him. It doesn't take us too long though before they start to encounter the automated weapon system, and then over the course of the episode we get several action sequences of them having to fight these weapons, which level up in difficulty each time they're destroyed. Okay, they're hardly the most spectacular of action sequences, but again I'm not going to complain too much about shoestring 80s sci-fi budgets, except to say that they do what they can to try and keep things interesting. I have to say though, for a weapon system that supposedly wiped out an entire planet, these things have about the same level of accuracy that would rival any Imperial stormtrooper, with the only serious injuries inflicted being the result of falling into a deep pit. Yar mentions at the start that they should take a minimal away team, which I guess makes sense, but was probably also done for budgetary reasons. I just think we could have sold how deadly these things are a bit better if we had a couple of red shirts along who get killed, although I guess it's now gold shirts because TNG security officers wear gold. I don't really understand though why Picard himself needed to beam down to take a look, once again exposing the entire senior staff of the ship to extreme danger. It just seems very reckless on his part. Crusher beaming down at least made some sense due to Riker possibly needing medical help, but I guess the saving grace of this decision is that Picard puts Geordi in command of the ship, and this for me is the standout part of the whole episode. I think by this point we're starting to get a somewhat decent idea of who Geordi is, but this really helps to flesh him out even more, showing that not only does he have the chops for engineering, but the ability to command others as well. Although this is his second time in command, the first time was pretty much glossed over except for him taking a moment to enjoy sitting in the big chair, and nothing was really done with it. Here though, the episode throws a lot of challenges at him on both a tactical level when dealing with the attacking drone and a personal one as he manages his inexperienced bridge officers and an obstinate chief engineer. Geordi is a very likeable kind of guy, and I think he does a great job of managing everyone else here, being very reassuring and supportive of his younger officers, but also standing his ground against Logan. In fact, I'd say the weakest aspect here was Logan himself, and whose only purpose is seemingly to provide a source of interpersonal conflict for Geordi to overcome. Although as I said Geordi handles it very well, Logan is written badly and completely contradicts himself in his objections. First, he's demanding they leave orbit immediately to save the ship from destruction, and then later when Geordi finally does take the ship out of orbit, he immediately criticises him for leaving Picard and the others on the planet, and then when Geordi explains to him his plan, tells him it's very risky and that he can't fight an enemy he can't see, implying he should no longer try to rescue the captain. Kinda shows really that Logan would probably be very bad at putting command. The only other thing I didn't really like here was Troy's unsolicited command advice. Sure, he's under a lot of pressure, but I think he was already doing pretty well in handling both the younger officers and Logan, so I just felt this would have been better placed at the end as an evaluation of his performance rather than trying to give him a pep talk. As for Geordi's tactics, I think these were pretty smart. Once they realise the object can't be tracked, he gets Worf to try and analyse a pattern in its behaviour so they can try and anticipate its next move. It doesn't work, sure, but it feels like a legitimate tactic to try and then sensibly withdraws the ship to safety when it's clear that they're in serious trouble. Separating the ship is again smart. Remember, this is a ship with families on board, so he keeps his priorities correct, safeguarding most of the crew first before taking back only what's necessary in order to try and save the away team. I'll agree with Logan that it is a risky thing to do, but as Admiral Adama once said, sometimes you've just got to roll a hard 6. His strategy pays off in the end though, and I think it was both cool and smart to use the atmosphere to force the drone to reveal its position, allowing them to destroy it. The only little problem here is by this point Picard has already deactivated the weapon system on the surface, so I was left wondering why the drone in orbit is still attacking the ship. This little plot hole could have easily been solved by just switching a couple of scenes around, but no matter, the climax is still a good one all the same. Incidentally, this is the first time we see the use of the ship's phaser banks, and I've always enjoyed the way this particular design was portrayed, as it feels rather unique as far as most sci-fi weapon systems go. Instead of a static turret or hardpoint, TNG era Federation ships have phaser strips instead, which have this cool looking power up phase as the energy swirls around the strip before meeting and firing. It's only a little thing, but visually I just find it far more interesting to watch than a classic looking cannon of some sort. I also really dig the sound effects of the ship's phasers itself, being just as iconic and distinctive as the TOS classic phasers, but with the added power-up sound as the energy builds up before firing. The weakest aspect of the whole episode for me is the stuff in the cavern, and I think the pace of the episode just stops dead every time we focus on Picard tending to the injured Crusher. It's pretty boring stuff, and though we get some anecdotes about Crusher's family history, it's not particularly insightful to her as a character, and Picard is just going through the motions of keeping her awake and stable, and I just found myself wanting to skip ahead from these bits to get back to the action. Things do pick up a bit when Data shows off his android skills by jumping down with ease, and the interactions with the Holo salesman played well by the always reliable Vincent Schiavelli. So yes, overall a good episode with great character building for Geordi and lots of action, which makes for, 3 episodes in a row now, which I've quite enjoyed, which is quite impressive for season 1. Backing up really what I said in my review for Coming of Age, that this season is definitely improving in its overall quality in the second half. Next time it's another Prime Directive based episode as Picard must mediate a dispute between 2 factions over some much needed drugs in the episode Symbiosis. Please feel free to leave any comments or feedback, and if you liked this episode then please do like, subscribe and share. This has been Jay Warden, signing off.